So, you may have seen this abomination which we refer to as the story of Undertale. Well, I have no idea who named it that since it isn't accurate at all. So, if that isn't correct, then what really is the story of Undertale? Well, since the game is 10 years old, I do want to tackle something that I haven't seen anyone do. So here is the true story of Undertale. Real quick, before we begin, I want to let you know how this will work. You see, when someone makes a timeline video, they'll explain why they put that event right there in the timeline so the viewers aren't confused as to why they put it there. Me, on the other hand, I'm going to do what Game Theory did with FNAF and list the evidence to the side so you can check it out after you watch this video. You got that? Well then, now we may truly begin. Long ago, two races existed on the planet: humans and monsters. Despite their differences, the races treated each other like siblings. But, among both races, there were those who were smarter than the average being. These humans and monsters were the ones who wanted to know more about their race, so they did some research which took centuries to confirm. Lots was learned from all of this. This would result in knowledge that shouldn't have been discovered, such as humans having the power equivalent to the entire monster population. But if a monster were to absorb one human soul, they would be extremely strong. Knowing this, many humans started getting paranoid over the idea of monsters attacking them and stealing their souls. This would lead to a war in the 1600s where they used spears and swords, but calling this a war was an overstatement. Shortly after this war began, the monsters were obliterated in the war. Of course, some monsters were strong enough to survive, but the humans took pity and gave them a more merciful punishment. This would be them having to be sealed underground with a magical artifact. This artifact had to be taken into the underground for the spell to be taken for it to work, meaning that if the monsters broke the barrier surrounding the underground, the humans couldn't seal them back. Trapped in a place beneath the surface, away from the beautiful sun and never to be seen by humanity again, the average monster settled into a place they called home, since the king is bad at names. However, names weren't the king's priority since he wanted to go back to the surface, so he hired some monsters to do some research on how they'd be able to break the barrier, but that would take centuries. In the meantime, the monsters would explore their new home and settle in many places such as Snowdin. They would also meet many new faces such as the Ghost family who had already existed in the underground and the Temmies who have a rich history. After lots of research, the monsters came to the conclusion that they'd need human souls to be absorbed by a monster to become god. With that power, the barrier can be shattered and monster kind can be freed. But by the time it would have been discovered, in the 90s, the King Asgore Dreamer, had gotten married to a woman known as Toriel Dreamer who may or may have not been related. Soon after, his wife started a nose-nuzzle competition for all kinds of cute couples to show everyone how cute they were. The competition was probably rigged and the Dreamers won the competition in 1998. After this, the two would do speeches more regularly and this would lead to the famous nickname for Asgore known as Fluffy Buns. Eventually, the two would decide to once again bring hope to the underground and finally bring the hope that was lost centuries ago. It's time for Asgore to finally have an heir. It's now the start of 201X. Asgore and Toriel now have a son they named Asriel because it was either that or Tagore. Asriel would be the one who would bring hope back to monster kind. But he had some growing up to do, and during that time he would discover someone who isn't from the underground but rather the surface. You see, sometime in 201X a human would fall into the underground. When Asriel saw them, he rushed over to check on them. He asked what their name was and they revealed their name was Chera. Asriel took Chera to his parents and they treated Chera like another child. The two spent lots of time together and they did a lot of goofy things, such as putting buttercups in the recipe for tea that almost killed Asgore. Sometime after that, Chera comes up with a plan and manipulates Asriel into going into it. This plan was quite dangerous. To summarize, Chara would kill themselves, Asriel would absorb their soul, they would go to the surface and collect 6 more souls, and Asriel would come and free everyone. The first 3 steps succeeded, but once they reached the humans, they attacked without thought. Of course, Asriel could destroy them since he has Chara's soul, but he refused and let them attack him. He managed to go back to the underground, but he didn't last for much longer. After hearing what happened, King Astor decided to redeclare war on the humans after the loss of his children. His wife, Toriel, didn't approve of this and decided to divorce him since she couldn't fathom the loss of more innocent humans. The divorce was official by the end of 201X. Sometime after the divorce, a man came to the king with brilliant ideas to modernize the underground and make life easier for the monster race. That man was a man named W.D. Gaster. He had big ideas, but he had to prove himself. Astor was intrigued, but Gaster would have to prove himself first, so he spent some time developing robots. While he is working on that, throughout 202X, 6 humans would fall down and have their souls taken. The monsters needed one more human, but humankind had noticed the missing children go into the underground, and so they made sure no one could enter again. Once the hype for humans appearing died down, Mr. Gaster was done with his robots. Astor was obviously impressed, so he funded Gaster's idea. This idea was to create the core, a place that would bring the monsters electricity, and with it, many monsters could use the internet, or as they called it, Undernet. Things were going well for Gaster until the end of 203X, when he fell into his creation and shattered across time and space. His robots seemed to have also been shattered and became goners. As for the common folk, people started to forget about him. Besides, all that matters is the core, and it's rude to talk about someone who's listening. Over the next few decades, not much really happens. No humans have fallen down, no royal scientists have been hired, nothing major really happens. This era, however, is the place where some famous monsters were born, as Mr. and Ms. Snowdrake, the former of which being a comedian, QC, a merchant in Snowdin, and Shra, the sister to Chiron, a famous singer who uses her sister as her only form of speaking English. However, there is one monster at this time who, while not famous, is friends with Astor, and being friends with someone like him is certainly something. That monster is none other than Rudy Holiday, who meets him at Hotland University. Then, the 70s start rolling, and that's where some important characters are brought into this world. The first of which is Undine, a fish who would become the head of the Royal Guard. The next would be Alphys, a shy lizard who would later live at the dump with 2 girls and act like a big sister to them. The last of these are a bit more interesting. You see, it was a normal day in Snowdin until 2 skeletons showed up and just asserted themselves. The older one walked into a bar and said I'd take the usual, and everyone laughed. As for romance, Rudy Holiday would marry a beautiful wedding, and Astor would be there to support him. The 80s hit, and this is where the magic of the Christmas part is discovered, but not because of St. Nicholas, but rather the monster Giftrat, who was tormented by kids and teens by having gifts be put under him. Seeing this, the other monsters got a tree and put gifts under there because they probably found some Christmas movie VHS. After word of Christmas spreads underground, Astor and Rudy become Rudolph and Santa by giving many monsters presents throughout the 80s and 90s, such as Papyrus and Rudy's Kids. Tragedy struck when Rudy fell down. After his death, Astor would continue what they started for all monsterkind, but more importantly Rudy's daughters. During this time period, Alphys lived in the dumps with Catty and Bratty, who abandoned their biological families. Meanwhile, Undine was being trained by Astor, who didn't hit her but rather dodged until she was able to hit him. Once she's grown up, she becomes the head of the Royal Guard. Sometime after, Papyrus comes to her house to train, but it was the middle of the night, so she went back to sleep. The next morning, he was still there, so Undine trained him. In the end, she came to the conclusion that Papyrus is strong but simply too nice to hurt anyone. So she just taught him cooking. The 90s have arrived and tragedy strikes all throughout the underground with many monsters such as Shrew and MS Snowdrake dying, leaving their families in shambles. The Drake family had it worse with the son, Snowy, running from home. Meanwhile, the Blook family were also separating with two of the ghosts quitting life on the farm to become training dummies. Another ghost, Hapstablook, starts to dislike his body and starts a fan club with only one person joining. This person is none other than Alphys, who shows off a design for Hapstablook, showing him off as a robot. Hapstablook likes the idea and the two go with the plan. Eventually, Alphys shows him to Asgore, and since it's the start of the 22nd century, he lets Alphys be the new royal scientist. After this, the two abandon their old lives and become icons in the underground, with Metaton being a famous celebrity, getting teens like Burgerpants working for him. Despite not being as famous as Metaton, Alphys is still known by common folk, at least known by those with dead relatives, because many monsters who experienced that went to Alphys because word has gone out of her doing research on the human souls and her believing she can resurrect monsters. After she received the monster's dust, she would try to revive them. After some trial and error, she succeeded and sent the human souls back to Asgore and was going to return the monsters back to their families, but things went wrong when the monsters melted and merged together into multiple amalgamates. After this, she got really overwhelmed with telling the families the truth and then spent most of her time at the dumps, meeting Undine there, and the two became friends. Eventually, Undine convinced Alphys to continue working, and this time, she injects determination into a flower, an effect that would soon come back to bite her. At first, nothing seemed to come out of it, but eventually, the flower came to life and woke up in the king's garden. He had all his previous memories and so called for his dad. Eventually Asgore came and the two spent weeks together, but it was all ultimately useless since he, Flowey, didn't feel anything from it. He then went to Toriel, thinking she could make him happy, but that ended up like Asgore. Not being able to feel anything, Flowey kills himself since there's no point in living in a world without love. Fortunately, his plan fails since after committing to the act, Flowey wakes up back in the garden realizing he can't die. He uses this to help everyone, providing good for the underground. It's all fun games until everyone starts to get predictable. It's like everyone around him is just sets of numbers, lines of dialogue. So, he tries murdering everyone, and it's the closest thing he feels to joy. Besides, everyone is nothing more than characters to him, and so he enjoys killing everyone. His reign of terror would go for a decade, torturing people who were once his family. But, like any reign of terror, his reign would end into 11x when another human falls in. The first human to fall in for a long time. Their name was Frisk, and they were able to put a stop to Flowey's reign since his power wasn't as powerful as Frisk's. As they go through the underground, they meet and kill many monsters, eventually reaching Asgore, the king of all monsters. Eventually he dies and Flowey absorbs the human souls, nearly becoming God, and he would have had it if it weren't for those meddling kids. Because the humans managed to free themselves from his control. After the fight, he begs for Frisk to kill him, but Frisk doesn't. Flowey tries to persuade us to kill him, but he fails. Eventually, he runs away and Frisk escapes the underground. But Flowey makes a promise to Frisk. If they just don't kill anyone, he'll spare the king. So, Frisk accepts his challenge and they travel the underground once more, being nice to everyone they meet and also befriending characters such as Papyrus, Undine, and Alphys, getting them to be better people and be more open about themselves. Once Frisk meets Asgore again, the two are about to battle once more when Toriel comes in and saves the day. Then, the others come in to meet Frisk, but everything goes wrong because it was all a trick by none other than Flowey, who not only captures them, but also absorbs the entire underground souls. He then turns into Asriel and he battles Frisk. Asriel, the god of Hyperdeath, kills Frisk in the battle, but they refuse, coming back whenever Asriel kills them. After a bit of warming up, Asriel turns into his final form, and while we're not able to save ourselves, we can save our friends. Everything goes well until there's one more person to save. Asriel himself, but he refuses to be saved, so we have to remind him of the days with Chera, the days he could feel all sorts of emotions. This hurts him enough for us to win. After this, he turns back to normal and shatters the barrier. We then walk out with our friends, and Frisk either leaves or stays with Tariel. And they all live happily ever after. But Chloe realized something. Frisk wasn't the one who had the power to save and reload, but you, the player. After this realization, when he begs us to not reset again, thinking he won't even be able to remember what happened. But why would we care? I mean, they are just video game characters. So, you do reset and then you get an idea. You've seen this fight button that you've sometimes used, but what if you use it on everyone? Well, at first the game seems the same, but it's pretty clear something's off when it takes longer to encounter enemies. Eventually, you see the text but nobody came, which is actually terrifying. You then progress through the game, killing everyone on sight, crying when you have to kill Papyrus, having a legendary fight against Undyne, being disappointed against Metat and Neo, and getting to fight Sen's Undertale. You then meet Chera, who has been reincarnated thanks to our actions, so they then destroy the world, but they soon realize you want to go back. They let you go back and you go for the pacifist ending to forget about your actions, but Undertale certainly did forget, because at the end of the pacifist route, Chera comes back and prevents you from ever having a good ending again. So there you have it, the true story of Undertale. Okay, not everything is 100% accurate, but I did try my best. Now, I'm not going to this again unless we get more lore for the 10-year anniversary and some people give me new info I wasn't aware of, but until then, like and subscribe or bald. Happy 10-year anniversary, everyone. It truly is amazing how a game like Undertale has existed for 10 years. Now, despite everything going on around the world, none of that will stop people like Toby Fox from creating amazing games for us. This game has changed my life and I can't wait to see his next game ends up. Anyways, thanks for watching and here's to another 10 years of Undertale.